May the words of our lips and the meditations of our hearts be always acceptable to you, O Lord, our strength and our Redeemer. Amen. You know, a couple of months ago, I guess it was, we were all super excited to go out and see Star Wars, right? The Force Awakens and stuff. I think it was like super exciting. But it kind of brought back, and I saw it on all kinds of commercials and stuff, all the merchandising stuff that comes along with it. You know what I'm talking about? Right? They got like the dolls, action figures, which I had my brothers used to say that in TV. They got like macaroni and cheese, they got cameras, they got, furnishings and stuff that's all that you can buy. And it's all for Star Wars. And then I saw this commercial, right, where this kid says, it's probably like his uncle or whatever, he's like, oh, my mom says you got all kinds of Star Wars stuff. Can I go down and see it? So they go down to the basement, right? And he's got all these things. And they're all still in the plastic, right? And he's like, what? You don't play with them? Because he's saying they have to be a certain way, right? Like I played with this right away. And there's M&M's inside. So there's like a little special seal that, it has its value kept. But then I'm like, but dude, I want the M&M's. So I take them on. So I open all this stuff, and now when I've turned it on and all that stuff, it's not in perfect mint condition. Now, a few weeks ago, I talked about perfect, right? We get that from the Greeks, right? That it's static. That it is the ultimate honed, designed, exactly the way it's supposed to be. Still in the box, as they say. Which is kind of what the Pharisees were living, weren't they? At the time, they were like being left alone by the Romans. Things were perfect. They had the temple, folks were bringing tax money, they had their own little army and police and whatnot. They were kind of like living a really good life. And so when Jesus shows up, he's kind of knocking the cart off a little bit. Like, dude, don't break the seal. Don't be pushing the buttons, right? Because this is how it is. We've got it perfect. Which is kind of frustrating and upsetting because they are surrounded by people who at the least are living a life that is not perfect. The folks who were living, the Jews that were living in first century Palestine were not living perfect lives. We hear the story about how if a Jewish man was walking with his family and a Roman soldier came up, he could take the husband, the male leader of the family, and say, you have to carry my pack for a mile. That's a bit degrading, isn't it? That's a bit embarrassing. Could you imagine you're driving down the street and somebody just pulls up and just says, hey, come with me, you got to carry my stuff. You got to drive me someplace. Right? Like if you're going like somewhere important, family event, whatever, it's a holiday, and someone just pulls you out of your car and says, let's go. We're leaving. I need you for a mile worth of work. That, for lack of a better term, ain't perfect. And so you have these Pharisees who want to keep the status quo. They want to keep things just as they are. They want things to stay perfect because it's working out for them really quite well. And in comes Jesus. Now Luke tells us throughout his gospel that this whole travel, there's always this thing. Jesus is always going places, right? It sounds like Forrest Gump when he's like in Vietnam. We were always going places. We were up, we were down, we were up, we were this, we were that, up, I hear something, get down. In the rain, it rained sideways, it was even raining up, all that stuff. They were going places. And so Jesus is going to Jerusalem for the crucifixion. And he knows it. And we read about that in the gospel. And so the Pharisees show up, and Jesus is on his way to Jerusalem. And so is it just a walk? Is he just traveling along? Is it really weeks and weeks and weeks to go from the little village of Nazareth to Jerusalem? Absolutely not. Of course not. It's a winding road, and he goes and does a lot of things. He meets with a bunch of people. He talks to people. Those that are sick, he heals. Those that are broken, he makes whole. Those that are troubled, he gives advice to. He gives advice to the Pharisees. who only come to see him at night, right? You hear about Nicodemus, who kind of sneaks in the dark, and says, what's the story with this new life? So his life is this journey, is this carrying on from Nazareth to Jerusalem. And the journey is filled with experiences. It's filled with connections. It's filled with relationships. It's filled with joys, right? There's weddings to go to. And, I don't know, like when I start to think about the wine ran out, I'll be saying that Jesus didn't have any wine. Or did he have a couple drinks here or there? I don't know. But the question is, there are weddings, there are funerals. His best friend dies, and he raises him from the dead. He meets with his sisters, right? Mary and Martha, right? And Mary's like hanging out with him, and Martha's like giving him a hard time. Talks about real life, doesn't it? It's this outpouring, it's this growth, it's this direction of things happening that Jesus is about. If we could take a pause and think about where this fits in the grand scheme of the Bible, maybe it's just like Genesis. If we could think about in the beginning, there was a formless void, and things happened, right? The sun, stars, plants, the grass, the animals, they all happen. And each time God says, it was good. But if we know anything, and I think we all do, I think we all have some semblance of knowledge in our brains, we know that how the world operates is simply this. There are seasons of growth, and there are seasons of death. There are times when the fruit on the trees blossom, and there are times when the leaves fall off, and it's dark, and it's cold, and it's empty. There are times when the fish swim, and there are times when the fish are still. There are times when there's hibernation, and there are times for running around picking berries. There are times in our lives, there are seasons when something's happening that's beautiful. And there are times where there are seasons, where there is heartache, and there is struggle, and there is sickness, and there is sadness. And if we think about God being the engine to all organic life, and we see that in his Genesisness, and God says it's good, it means that it's not supposed to be perfect. It's not supposed to be static. Our lives are not supposed to be sterile. Our universe is ever changing, ever growing. And sometimes it feels great, and sometimes it feels terrible. And so Jesus comes on the scene in the first century and rips the container up. He takes this thing and he goes, oh wait, let me get this off of you. You can't play with it with that sticker on there, and you can't eat the M&Ms if they're still living. You got to open them. And now the bag's ripped open, but the only way to eat the M&Ms is to open the bag. Because they're good. It's not fun to look at it. It's fun to play with it. Because it's good. Jesus takes away this perfect don't touch anything moment and dives right in. He says, I'm going to be a part of participating in life. And he invites us to participate in life too. You see, the Pharisees aren't really participating. They're kind of like giving opinions. They're kind of like talking about life. They're kind of saying, well, it's out there. And they're like kind of behind the glass. Like the Jerry Seinfeld who's in the back of the taxi. And they're driving through New York City, and they're almost crashing and everything. He's like, whew, that was a close one. Good thing this isn't reality. It is reality. The Pharisees are kind of like Yelp. Does anyone know what Yelp is? It gauges with opinions about everything that's going on, but there's no productivity about Yelp. Do we know anybody who's like that? Do we know any Yelp? People that's all they do is they give you their opinions. Hey, what do you do? Oh, nothing. I don't really do anything. But I'll tell you what's good and what's bad. what's right and what's wrong. I'll tell you what's static and perfect. And if it's not perfect, let me tell you about it. Let me flog you for all your errors. But I'm not going to participate in that. Because I'm going to get dirty, or muddy, or bloody, or yucky. Nope. I'm going to keep it. And Jesus is frustrated by the thought of not living your life. He's frustrated by the fact that people believe things in the package. Because the Pharisees are not alone. How many of us know people who live their life like it's got to stay in the package? Returning it in the same condition in which they found their lives. I want things to be better, but I don't really want to do anything to make it better. I don't like the way we're doing things, but I'm too good to get involved. Or they start to have things go wrong in their lives. And they're like, it's way too much to handle. I don't want to grieve. I don't want to get into a relationship because I don't want to get hurt anymore. I don't want to fight this because fighting it means that I might lose. I don't want to be in this or do that because there are consequences for living your life. You know something like that? Do you have moments like that yourself? Do you, as the old Pink Floyd song used to say, are comfortably numb? Sometimes I think our country and our world gets a little comfortably numb. A little behind the glass. Little, I love it from a distance. Because if you get involved, if you start getting into the toad, into the good, that means that something's going to happen. There's a story that says that if you're going to be a warrior, you're going to be broken. And if you're going to be an explorer, you're going to be lost. But if you're going to be in love, you're going to be both. Jesus, God, is love. We are invited to that life experience. Not to perfect. Not to behind the plastic. Not to, those little ties you can't get off. And then all of a sudden you get the scissors and it's too hard for you to cut through, right? Those toys you talked about. And you can't get that off. And then you got pliers. And then you almost break the thing to get it out. Christ says this is what life is. Get it out. Do not return it in the same condition that you found it. Get out there and get dirty. See the drinking and the dancing and the joy of the weddings. And see the tears and the heartache and the brokenness of the funeral. Be in both. They are all true. It's all good. And so this morning I invite you to examine your life. Am I skimming the surface of what's supposed to happen, or am I getting in there and mixing it up? How do you want to live your life? Are you on the shelf for people to look at? Someone else to touch it. Don't touch that. You're ruining its value. Are you living as if don't scrape the paint? Don't get any of the ink on your fingers because you've lost its value? Or are you living as if the value is only in the damage? Are you better when you do nothing, or are you better at the end of doing everything? That is the message. That's why Jesus says to the Pharisees, you go ahead and tell Herod he's a snake. I'm not giving up. I'm not stopping. I'm not making it easy for you. I'm not going to be gentle. I'm going to love. And that's what I'm telling these folks who are walking with me. And that's what I'm telling the people that I touch and that I talk to and that I heal. I'm not here to go, hey, I really feel sorry for you. Good luck with that. But that I want to be next to you. Close. taste your tears on your cheek. That's the life Christ calls us to. So I invite us to look at what's in our package today. Our hearts, our lives, whatever it is. And may you open the package and play. For that is the life of Tov. A life worth living. A life that is good. Amen. Let us pray.